The chill of early winter crept through the cracked apartment window, curling around Elena Morales like a silent reminder of everything she lacked. She stood in the dimly lit kitchen, staring at the worn cabinet door she'd opened and closed 100 times, hoping something new might appear. But reality remained unchanged: a single can of beans, 3 wrinkled potatoes, and half a loaf of bread hardened at the edges. Behind her, the soft hum of the refrigerator blended with the distant sounds of honking traffic and a baby crying down the hall. Her daughter, Luna, lay curled on the couch beneath a thin blanket, her breath slow and shallow in sleep. Elena gently touched her forehead. "No fever tonight, thank God." She whispered a quiet prayer she wasn't sure anyone was listening to anymore. Bills were piling up on the table. Rent was overdue, again. She was behind on hours at the diner since they'd cut staff, and her side cleaning jobs barely covered groceries. The weight of being both mother and father, provider and protector, was a storm she had no umbrella for. As she turned away from the cupboard, ready to make do with what little she had, a faint sound echoed through the thin wall, a thud, followed by a weak, rattling cough. She froze, listening closer. The sound came again, this time followed by a low groan. Her neighbor, Mrs. Adeline, the elderly woman who lived alone in the next unit, was hardly ever heard. She was quiet, fragile, and mostly forgotten. Elena hesitated only a moment before grabbing the potatoes and bread. She quickly washed and diced the potatoes, boiled them with a dash of salt, and warmed the bread with butter. It wasn't much. But it was warm, and it was made with care. Balancing the plate in her hands, Elena stepped into the cold hallway and knocked softly on Adeline's door. Unaware that this single act of kindness would set in motion a chain of events that would change her life forever, the door creaked open slowly, revealing a frail figure wrapped in a thick cardigan. Mrs. Adeline peered out with tired eyes, her silver hair pulled back in a messy bun. A look of surprise, almost disbelief, crossed her face when she saw Elena standing there with a plate of food in her hands. "For me?" she asked softly, voice thin with age and astonishment. Elena nodded, offering a warm smile. "I had some extra and thought you might be hungry." Adeline hesitated, her hand trembling as she reached for the plate. "No one's brought me dinner in, well, I can't even remember." Her voice cracked with emotion. Elena stepped inside at the gentle invitation and helped her to the small kitchen table, covered in old placemats and newspaper clippings. The apartment was tidy but filled with the lonely stillness of someone who hadn't shared a meal with another person in a long time. As Adeline took her first bite, her eyes fluttered closed in appreciation. "Potatoes never tasted so good," she whispered. They sat together, 2 women from different generations, both shaped by loss and hardship. In between bites and sips of warm tea, Adeline spoke of her late husband, her days as a schoolteacher, and the long, quiet years since her family had drifted away. "No one really checks in anymore," she said, eyes glossy. "You grow old and disappear, even while you're still here." Elena listened with her heart. For the first time in weeks, her own burdens felt lighter. She realized that while she was fighting to survive, so was Adeline, in a different but equally heavy way. "I'll come by again tomorrow," Elena said, surprising even herself. Adeline reached across the table, gently squeezing Elena's hand. "You already brought more than food tonight." As Elena stepped back into the hallway, something shifted. The apartment was still cold, the bills still unpaid. But her heart felt warm. She hadn't just fed an old woman, she had kindled a forgotten connection, and unknowingly, opened a door to something far greater than charity. It had been a week since Elena first knocked on Adeline's door, and the quiet companionship between them had become a comforting rhythm. Every evening after her shift, Elena brought over a warm meal, something simple but shared with laughter, stories, and mutual healing. Adeline seemed brighter each day, sitting taller, her voice growing stronger. Luna often tagged along, drawing pictures or listening quietly as Adeline told old stories about dancing with her husband or teaching children with fire in their eyes. One chilly Thursday evening, as Elena stirred soup on Adeline's stove, a sudden knock startled them both. Adeline's face stiffened. She rarely had visitors. Elena opened the door to find a tall man in his 40s, sharply dressed, holding a bouquet of daffodils. He looked uncertain, eyes scanning the apartment until they landed on the elderly woman sitting at the table. "Mom," he said softly. Adeline gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth, and tears welled in her eyes. "Michael," she whispered. The moment was suspended in stillness. Elena stepped aside, watching mother and son reunite after what she would later learn were 7 long years of silence, years born from stubborn pride, misunderstandings, and grief. Later that evening, after Michael and Adeline had their first real conversation in years, he turned to Elena in quiet gratitude. "She told me about you," he said. That someone kind, someone unexpected, reminded her that life is still worth sharing. "You did that for her." They talked over lukewarm tea. Michael asked about her life, her struggles, Luna, and her dreams. She mentioned nursing school, a dream she'd shelved the day her husband died. "I never had the time. Or the money," she said, almost laughing at how distant the dream felt. Michael paused, thoughtful. "You gave my mother something I couldn't, joy, dignity, hope. Let me help you the way you helped her." Elena was stunned. She had walked in with food. And now, someone was offering her a future. 2 months later, the sun peeked through the clouds as Elena stepped onto the community college campus, her heart pounding beneath her second-hand coat. In her bag was a crisp acceptance letter, and in her soul, a quiet fire. She was finally going back to school. Her tuition was fully covered, courtesy of an anonymous scholarship, though she had no doubt who was behind it. Michael, Adeline's son, had kept his promise. He didn't make her feel like a charity case, he treated her like someone who had simply earned kindness by giving it. Life hadn't magically become easy. Elena still worked part-time at a local clinic to make ends meet, but something inside her had shifted. Where there was once dread, now there was purpose. Her evenings, once filled with worry, were now shared between Luna's homework, her own studies, and warm dinners at Adeline's apartment. Their table had grown into a sanctuary. Sometimes Michael joined with his 2 children, who called Adeline Grandma like they had never stopped. Sometimes Elena brought classmates who couldn't afford a hot meal. There was always laughter, sometimes tears, and always room for one more. One evening, Luna looked up from her plate and asked, "Mom, why do we always eat dinner here now?" Elena smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her daughter's ear. "Because once, when we had nothing, we still had enough to share. And that changed everything." Adeline squeezed Elena's hand, her eyes soft and glistening. "You saved me," she whispered. Elena shook her head. "We saved each other." As the table buzzed with conversation and the scent of fresh bread filled the air, Elena looked around and felt something she hadn't in a long time, not just hope, but belonging. What began as one small act of kindness, a simple plate of potatoes and bread, had blossomed into a new life, a new family, and a reminder that giving from the heart can return blessings in ways you never expect.